With summer vacation coming to an end, at least for those in school, many parents and students are wondering what things will be like come September. There was a viral photo that showed some high schoolers cramped together in a hallway, with few people wearing masks, and it raised a lot of questions and concerns regarding schools safely reopening. It didn't help that the school which went viral would end up having 9 of their staff and students test positive for COVID. And even without a vaccine, it seems the plan is for students seemingly around the globe to start attending schools as if we haven't been dealing with a pandemic for the last 9 months or so. Now, depending where you live, the school year may have already started. As I know, in the United States, a lot of schools start in August. In Canada, we start in September, but I'm sure other places in the world start before and after us. Regardless of where you're from, if you're a student, you're probably wondering what the deal is. Hopefully we'll be able to help you figure that out, as today on Life's Biggest Questions, we're asking, is it safe to return to school? What's going on, guys? Welcome back to LBQ. I'm your host, Jared Bronstein, and truth be told, this question is incredibly specific for each individual. For some who are immune compromised, meaning they have a weaker immune system than the average person, well, the risk is much higher. Some countries or areas claim they've been COVID-free for months. Others appear to be getting a good handle on stopping the spread, and some are definitely still struggling. At the end of the day, I'd say given your specific situation, you need to use your best judgment. That being said, we'll be covering some general concerns and protocols that have been outlined in hopes that schools don't lead to transmission among students. As you can imagine, the CDC website appears to be giving more generic advice, as they can't advise each individual area how they should approach reopening, given that every area is different. Some states are handling the spread much better than others, yet there are certain cities or towns that, even though statewide things aren't so bad, are still not handling the spread very well. Because of this, there is no concrete answer as to when or if it is safe to return to school. That being said, there are certain guidelines and practices that should be implemented, regardless of how severely that area is being hit with the spread. Some of these include the obvious, such as frequent hand washing, wearing a face mask, and social distancing. However, some of the other suggestions from the CDC are things I don't think many people think of. Things such as having a plan for when or if a student or staff tests positive for the disease, as well as a plan with the state and local health officials to help trace all those the hypothetically infected person came into contact with. As previously mentioned, every country and state is appearing to handle things differently. As the CDC highlights, I quote, "Internationally, schools have responded to COVID-19 using a variety of approaches. For example, China, Denmark, Norway, Singapore, and Taiwan all require temperature checks at school entry. Most countries have changed the way they operate to reduce class sizes, increase physical distance between students, and keeping students in defined groups to reduce contacts, i.e. cohorting. Furthermore, many countries have staggered attendance, start and stop times, and created alternating shifts to enable social distancing. Majority of these practices seem to be encouraged worldwide, as other sources such as healthychildren.org also recommends the following for anyone returning to school: cleaning and disinfecting high-touch surface areas, regular hand washing, and desks 3 to 6 feet apart, as well as fewer students and staff in classrooms. These appear to be the more obvious ones, but they also suggest for teachers to move from classroom to classroom, not students. The idea here is that with less students walking the halls, it could significantly reduce the chance of transmission among the school. Even if the class sizes are reduced to 10 or 15 students, multiply that by another 10 classrooms at the minimum, and you could have about 100 kids walking the hallways at the same time. If you flip it and just have 10 teachers walk in different classrooms instead, not only can they safely distance, but it would significantly reduce the chance of a spread. Another different but interesting take is having the children eat lunches at their desk. Instead of having a bunch of students crammed into a cafeteria, eating all together, which requires them to open their mouths and potentially spread more bacteria, having them eat at their desk, which would be their own space, socially distanced, would be a good practice. The site also recommends using outdoor spaces for teaching when possible, especially for activities that could lead to an increased risk of transmission, such as gym class, music, choir, and so on. A backup plan, if you will, is also encouraged, with the ability to go virtual if need be, assuming a breakout does occur. And although there are practices and guidelines in place, as I previously mentioned, each area and school needs to be looked at on a case-by-case basis. Some schools have implemented putting plexiglass around desks so students are less likely to contact any illness. However, another troubling factor that many are concerned about is the upcoming cold and flu season we're going to get. Unless proper testing is done, it's going to be incredibly hard for officials to determine whether or not someone contracted COVID or a common flu or cold. Also, the period of quarantine said students will need to be in is also undecided in a lot of areas, which clearly needs to be figured out sooner than later. Another thing professionals have been pointing out is the importance, both from an educational and social level, of sending your children to school and being in an environment that isn't their home. Although some schools are planning on going totally virtual, while others appear to be implementing a hybrid approach, some teaching in person, some online, and the rest doing it the old-fashioned way, it seems there's a genuine fear that not sending your child back to school could be even more dangerous. Carolyn Cardamone, a physician assistant with One Medical, told CNBC she would accept the risk of infection to send her daughter back to school, citing that her daughter needs help with social and development skills, in which Carolyn believes she can gain while learning alongside others. She said, I quote, "She is entering 5th grade this year, and the idea she will miss this year of in-person instruction, then go straight to middle school is terrifying." But there's also the schools that are trying to figure out how to move ahead. Some don't have proper plans in place, and they're relying on whether or not parents are expecting to send their children back to school so they could then formulate a plan that works best. The issue here is that no one is a fortune teller. Don't tell a psychic I said that. Dr. Esther Chu, an emergency medicine physician at Oregon Health and Science University, also spoke with CNBC and claimed she's currently leaning toward virtual learning, but can't say for sure because there's no way of knowing how things will be in her community when school starts. The outlet asked the opinions of 20 health professionals if they would be sending their kids back to school when the time comes, and as you can imagine, they all had different answers. The one common thing they talked about, however, is location. Dr. Ashish Jha, director of the Harvard Global Health Institute, is expected to send his 3 kids to school in Massachusetts when they open this fall. He explained, I quote, "Our infection numbers are relatively low, and there's enough capacity to create safe spaces. However, he's well aware that certain protocols need to be in effect, and admitted, I quote, if you open up without a good plan in a place that isn't safe, you'll get outbreaks and you'll shut down." Going back to what I said previously about location, Jha even said that he would recommend each parent make a decision on their own situation, and given how things are being handled where they live, I quote, "If I were in Dallas, for instance, which is experiencing an active outbreak, I'd strongly recommend against it." Those were the doctor's words, not mine. Unfortunately, the pandemic has affected more than just our health. Economies have been hit incredibly hard, and there is fear that things could get worse than they already are. This directly affects the school system as school districts have less funds and resources to use, ensuring that going back to school is done so in a safe manner. As per the US Department of Education, approximately 28% of teachers are over the age of 50 years old, which makes them more at risk of disease. This could lead to some refusing to work and others opting for an early retirement as they feel it's not worth risking their health. And with less teachers, it would make it even tougher to have smaller classroom sizes. But as previously mentioned, the idea of learning from home can be incredibly difficult for students of all ages. Even when I had to work from home for the first few months, it was much harder than being in the studio, so I can't imagine what it would be like to try learning about algebra or biology. Then again, I was never interested in those topics. There's also the lack of social aspect. Not to say that kids would be playing on the playground together per se, but even the ability to see your classmates in person and being in an environment with other people, in a safe manner of course, could potentially benefit a lot of them. So as you can see, there is no real concrete answer to this question. If you live in an area where the cases have significantly gone down and the school you or your child is attending has a good plan in place, that's one thing. But if cases are spiking and there's evidence of an outbreak, if possible, I'd recommend opting for some online learning, at least for the time being. Ultimately, it's up to each individual to decide what they're most comfortable with. Some of the healthcare professionals mentioned the struggle it's been on them professionally, to work while also having to take care of their kids, who would normally be at school while they work. Thankfully, they could afford to get some extra help, at least for the most part, but for lower income families, the idea of having a nanny or an extra pair of helping hands isn't a viable option. This leads to a tough decision which needs to be made: how a parent, especially a single parent, can handle working while also ensuring their child is getting the best education and keeping them as safe as possible. It seems each individual student and family must make that judgment call, and as we inch closer to the school year, at least in Canada, it seems there's a lot of questions that still need to be answered. In the United States, some schools are likely going to be entirely virtual, while others will push for in-person classes. Either way, hopefully we can put an end to this pandemic sooner than later, and things will go back to normal sooner than later as well. Until then, we just need to continue following protocols while using our best judgment to keep ourselves, our families, and the rest of the world safe. As always guys, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so let me know what you're thinking in the comments down below. Do you feel safe going back to school? Why or why not? You gotta let us know right down below. For now, let's reply to some comments from the video. What if World War II ended in stalemate? GGB10 said, "Final coffin in the nail," quoting me. I probably did say that, and you obviously know what I meant because you guys are quoting me on it. Obviously I meant, the final nail in the coffin, but sometimes I write things down and then I read them differently. That's just how the brain works. Sometimes you just misread things, and that's clearly what I did. Noah Dennis said, "What if dogs didn't exist? Then sad boy hours would be from when I wake up to when I go to sleep." Because I would just dream about dogs, and then I would wake up and I'd be sad again that they don't exist. But dogs really are like one of the best animals out there. Not even animals, they're man's best friend. I don't need friends because I have dogs. Just Gaming said, "Do what if Donald Trump cheats the 2020 election?" I don't know if I want to do that, because I feel like a lot of you guys would get mad about that one. So maybe we shouldn't do that one. Why don't we do what if Joe Biden cheats the 2020 election? Huh? Why is it always against Trump? See guys, I'm on your side now. Don't come at me, come at this guy. Anyways guys, that's all for this one. I've been your host, Jared Bronstein. You guys have been watching Life's Biggest Questions. As always, I encourage you guys to drop us some questions down below that you want answered on our channel, and we'll see you guys again soon.